Hey everybody, thank you for joining me. You might have seen on social media today various people who were posting selfies with 900 days, and that 900 days means the 900 days of confinement that Steven Donziger has experienced. Those 900 days have been spent either in his apartment in New York or, for some of that time, actually in a prison cell. And today, I'm joined by my friend Steven Donziger, who will tell us more about where his case is here today at the 900-day anniversary. I think some important things are happening because Steven is going on the offense in certain ways. We are not going to forget what has happened here. Not only are we continuing to take a stand for this whole thing, the whole thing is so absurd that he is still in confinement, and if he has to experience his entire sentence, maximum, in confinement, he will not be released until April 25th. I see that Steven is here with us. Hi, my friend. How are you?
Good. It's great to see you again, Marianne. Thank you for having me.
Always great to see you, Steven. Now, it seems to me, Steven, that the vast majority of people who would be here are well aware of your case and want to know, well, what's happening now? What are we going to do now? But there might be some people who don't know. So could you give us just a little thumbnail sketch for some people who are just coming into the conversation and need to know, what is this case about?
Thank you. So this case is fundamentally about a poisoning, an industrial poisoning of the Amazon that threatens to wipe out 5 indigenous groups in Ecuador. And my role as a lawyer, as part of a legal team that helped these peoples win a huge court judgment against Chevron, which is the perpetrator of this environmental crime. And ultimately, the reason I'm here tonight, and I think a lot of people want to hear my take on this whole story, is Chevron, in order to not pay the people they poisoned, has been attacking me now for 10, 12 years with the help of 2 federal judges in New York. And ultimately was able to jail me for 45 days and has kept me in home detention now for almost 3 years because I defended my clients and refused to turn over my computer to Chevron, which contained all sorts of privileged and confidential information. So I've been attacked, and I think the judicial system has been abused by Chevron. And I think that this case raises issues that we all need to care about. First and foremost, justice for the people in the Amazon who have been poisoned by an American oil company. And secondly, what kind of freedoms do we have as lawyers and advocates and campaigners and political leaders and to speak out and hold these polluting companies accountable for destroying the planet, and what disturbs me, and speaking about my own situation most, is, I'm a human rights lawyer who's successful. And the fact that the Chevron has been able to manipulate the judicial system to get me detained for almost 3 years when I did nothing wrong. I represented my client successfully. And by the way, the case we won has been validated by 2 Supreme Courts, one in Ecuador and one in Canada. But the fact they're able to get away with this, by the way, all without a jury, is extraordinary. It's an affront to the rule of law. It's not consistent with the values we have as a country, as a free country. And I think it raises serious questions that you've talked about, Marianne, a lot in your speeches and in your campaigning and in just the work that you do, which is how much control in our society do we really want corporations to have? I mean, in this case, I was, just to be clear, in the criminal contempt case, when a judge charged me, his charges were rejected by the normal federal prosecutor, and he appointed a Chevron law firm to prosecute me and lock me up. And it's the first corporate prosecution ever in the United States. I hope it's the last. We cannot let this happen again to anybody. But it's a part of a playbook invented by Chevron and the fossil fuel industry to try to intimidate those of us who speak out. So my situation obviously is very serious for me and my family. It's also serious for our country.
Well, it's important that you talk about this as part of a larger playbook. And of course, what's happening here is that they're coming after the person who exposed the crimes and trying to make it look like he is the criminal. And this is very similar to what's happening with Julian Assange. And that's why so many people talk about your cases now in tandem. And so for anybody who doesn't know, the original crimes that were committed here were committed by oil giant Texaco, which was later on bought by Chevron. And for the sake of saving $3 a pit, Texaco knowingly unlined these oil pits. And that's where all of this damage, all these carcinogens, all this pollution came from, in the water, in the air, in the food. And Texaco executives at that time actually told the people of Ecuador living in that swath of the Amazon that this water, that this oil was not only safe to have in their drinking water, it actually was like mother's milk. It had vitamins in it. Now, Chevron has never denied that wrongdoing. As a matter of fact, Chevron has said that the reason they wanted this case tried not in the United States, but in Ecuador, was they said, try it in Ecuador and we will pay whatever the judgment is. The judgment ended up at about $9 billion. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yeah, $9.5 billion. Yep. Plus interest could be, significantly higher, 12 billion. Right. But I will say this about that number. People remember, I'm sure, the BP spill, the accident in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. Do you know that BP, which is a highly profitable company, ended up paying over time and sort of fines and court costs and compensation lawsuits close to $70 billion.
Okay.
So while 10 billion or so might seem like a lot of money, and I think it is a lot of money, but compared to what the profits and the blood profits that Chevron and its predecessor company Texaco took out of the Amazon, it's a paltry amount of money. And frankly, it won't be enough to do a full and comprehensive cleanup. It just won't be. But the fact they haven't paid a penny while BP's paid 60, 70 billion for what they did in the US, which, by the way, that was an accident. What Chevron and Texaco did in Ecuador was done deliberately. They designed the system to pollute in order to save money. It's even worse.
And they don't even deny this. Now, remember, everyone, and also profits and the money that Chevron has that we know of publicly is something like 160 billion, 170 billion. This is not a lot of money for them. This is about their holding a line and saying that they will not allow the Steven Donzigers of the world. They will not allow the human rights activists. They will not allow the environmental activists to come after them. So as Stephen said, this has to do with something that wasn't even the initial judgment, that has to do with wanting his computer, that has to do with their coming after him, something that was basically a misdemeanor charge that the state of New York wouldn't even take on. But a Judge Lewis Kaplan in New York found a loophole which allowed him to actually turn the prosecution, which had been turned down by the state of New York. He turned the prosecution over to Chevron. This is the first, and as Stephen was saying, hopefully the last, corporate prosecution of a US citizen by a corporation, by Chevron. And so far they've been successful. That's the 900 days. But Stephen, when I talked to you the other day, you said we got some things going on. We're not stopping this. And this is what I want everybody to remember. We are not letting these things go. This is bigger than Stephen. Not only are we going to continue to stand on this, and we're going to continue to say, release him now, Merrick Garland, release him now, Joe Biden, but we are also going to say, enough with this. It is time for the people who are standing for radical humanitarianism and the rule of law and ethics and any sense of more responsibility to people and planet to say enough is enough. We're not always going to be defending ourselves. You've been coming after us. No, we're going to come after you. And that is what I really want to hear from you about, Stephen. I know you can't tell us everything, but there seem to be some plans afoot about lawsuits, et cetera.
Well, let me be very clear. There's a whole bunch of lawyers working on this who are not me. I mean, I'm in detention and, I'm limited in what I can do. I can't travel, but there's lawyers in other jurisdictions who are planning to, if they have to, seize Chevron's assets to force the company to comply with the law and pay the judgment that they owe the people of Ecuador, which, by the way, has been affirmed, as I said, by 6 different appellate courts, including 2 Supreme Courts. So
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, let me be clear. Chevron should not force the indigenous peoples of Ecuador to go search for lawyers far and wide to do this. They should pay the judgment. They should do the right thing, and they should comply with the law. You know, the case was in Ecuador because they wanted it there. They accepted jurisdiction. It was originally filed here in the United States. They moved it to Ecuador, promised to pay the judgment. Never, when the judgment came down, they refused to pay it, threatened the indigenous peoples with what they called a lifetime of litigation if they kept going. And they're trying to make good on that, in addition to attacking the lawyers as a kind of a weapon of mass distraction to get people not to think about the crimes they committed in the Amazon. So they shouldn't force the people of Ecuador to spend their precious few scarce resources and time like figuring out how to chase Chevron around the world. I mean, Chevron should meet its responsibilities. They lost the case, pay up. But the fact that they won't, I think, is a terrible commentary on Michael Wirth, their CEO, their board, Hugh Pate, their general counsel, and of course this law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, which Chevron has literally paid hundreds of millions of dollars in fees to attack me for 10 years. I mean, I've gone up not just against Gibson Dunn. They've used 60 law firms to attack me and others, 2,000 lawyers. It's such an abuse and a total squandering, by the way, of shareholder resources. And it's unbelievable. But why are they doing it? Because we've scared them. I mean, the communities in Ecuador have scared the heck out of Chevron. And I will point out also that the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, I know it's a big name, but it's basically a human rights council of lawyers, has looked at what they've done to me in the US case that's led to my detention, and has found it to be illegal, a violation of multiple provisions of international law based on international legal treaties that the United States has signed. And they've ordered the US government to release me and pay me compensation for this illegal detention that I'm still suffering through right now. So those who are objective outside the United States who look at this can't believe it. I mean, the United Nations Human Rights Council doesn't generally rule against the United States. I mean, this is not a country that people would consider to be one that has a lot of problems with its legal system. I'm only the second American, by the way, ever to get such a ruling in history. So we plan to demand the US government implement this ruling, release me, and pay me compensation for the today's day 900. For every one of these days that they've deprived me of my liberty and my ability to work doing my job, and not to mention the emotional distress I've had to suffer, my wife, my 15-year-old son. By the way, I'm strong and resilient, but it does really obviously affect your life in a lot of ways, and I'm dealing with it effectively, I believe. But the pain, the hurt, the stress of this kind of thing is just extraordinary, as you can imagine.
I like the phrase you used earlier, weapon of mass distraction, the various ways that forces like Chevron are using in order to get us to look away from the real issues of what's happening here. All of you, I want you to know that you can go to it's free Donziger, correct, Stephen? freedonziger.com or .org?
.com.
Okay, freedonziger.com to hear all about the case, to know about the things that you would be wanting to know about in order to spread the word, let people know, be part of this process. It's all about amplifying the conversation, not only to free Stephen. He should not be spending one more day in home confinement in this case, but also in order that we might create more and more of a field of conversation that forces such as Chevron know that the people of the United States and really the people of the world are not willing to just stand by while this kind of malfeasance occurs, not only in terms of what the farmers in Ecuador have endured all these years, but also in terms of a human rights activist, a human rights lawyer such as Stephen and what he is going through. Stephen, what are the things, obviously going to freedonziger.com, hopefully everyone, that so much has been done to deny Steven his ability to make a living for his family, to do the things that one would normally do in order to take care of your life. I hope you will consider a financial contribution as well, so that we can continue to have the legal power that is necessary in order to move this case forward. What are the other things, Steven, that people can do or that you want people to know on this 900th day of your confinement?
Well, you know, what we're asking people to do first and foremost is join our campaign. Go to the freedonziger.com site and sign up, and you'll get our emails, our communications, and there's all sorts of things happening all the time on social media and in the street, you know, rallies and you know, letters to members of Congress, to Attorney General Garland, ultimately to President Biden. There's going to be a call made for a pardon from President Biden of me soon. A bunch of organizations are organizing that right now. So the key is just to get in the site, give us your information, and we'll communicate with you what we need. It's always changing. We have, by the way, tens of thousands of people who've joined up. I mean, it's become an extraordinary global movement for justice for the people of Ecuador, and just for all of us, for free speech. I mean, you've helped us so much, Marianne, and you and Susan Sarandon and Roger Waters and so many people, Jody Williams, the Nobel laureate. So we're growing and getting Lucy Lawless. I mean, there's so many amazing people. It's been just, honestly, it's been an honor to work with so many extraordinary people building this, you know, because it's not about me. It really isn't. It's about what we can all do together to hold the fossil fuel industry accountable, to hold major polluters accountable, and to save our planet for our kids, for our grandkids, and for ourselves. So, you know, they're doing this to me so we can't hold them accountable, and they can just continue taking super profits by taking oil out of the ground while the planet dies. You know, that's really what it's ultimately about.
You know, everyone, I don't know if you saw it, but Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib actually had the CEO of Chevron at a hearing, and she actually brought up Steven's case. She said, there are more of us than you. You can't arrest all of us. Both of those I thought were great lines. But what was really priceless was the CEO of Chevron, when confronted by Congresswoman Tlaib about this, said, I don't know. He acted like, I don't know what you're talking about, Congresswoman. He acted like, you know, I don't really know about that case. I mean, you know, it was just
what's interesting about that, I mean, first of all, she was awesome, and Representative Lee has been an amazing supporter of the people of Ecuador and of me, my family. But what was interesting is that CEO, when he acted like he didn't know what she was talking about, he's mentioned this case and my name publicly on a number of occasions at shareholder meetings. I mean, it's like,
the CEO knows. The CEO knows that they have this little $9 billion bill that they just haven't quite taken care of. So let's talk about a couple of other things, because you mentioned Merrick Garland and you mentioned Joe Biden. So I want everybody to understand here. There are several Congress people. First of all, as Steven had mentioned before, not only the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, but really the most important, most powerful human rights organizations in the world have taken a stand on behalf of Steven in this issue. Secondly, the very idea that a private citizen is being prosecuted by an oil company, no less, in a U.S. courtroom. This is why so many people are asking Merrick Garland to remove the case from Chevron, put it back in the hands of the U.S. judiciary. And then at this point, just to say to Joe Biden, stop this farce. And even if and when it gets to the point where Steven's just going to have to stay in that apartment, stay in home confinement till the end of April, at that point, we want a pardon from the U.S. president. So I want to thank all of you, because the issue here has to do with perseverance. You know, a lot of times we can get excited about a case, we're interested in a case, and Steven's is an example where a lot of people know now, and a lot of people have shown that they care, but where we sometimes fall short as groups of people is that we don't stay in there, you know, after the initial, like, oh my God, did you hear about Steven Donziger? The issue is, don't lose sight of this now. Stay in here, hold vigil, stay, bear witness to this unbelievable injustice. Bear witness to this injustice, not only on behalf of Steven, but on behalf of all of the farmers in Ecuador who have been affected by this, and on behalf of the planet itself. That's what's so important here, that we continue to persevere. Because when things like this happen, the forces that are making these horrible injustices, making them happen, who are perpetrating these injustices, expect us to become exhausted. They expect us to just get tired. They expect us to just, at some point, just throw up our hands and say, okay, this is just the way it is. And this is why so much decline is happening in our society and our entire civilization, because this just exhaustion, this just outrage fatigue. And so we must not allow that to temper our moral outrage at times like this. And that's why I continue to have Steven on. That's why Steven continues to be brought on by a lot of people, to be talked about, because we must not stop. This must continue. And like I said earlier, Steven, Chevron's had enough of our behavior. We have had enough of Chevron's behavior. Last word over to you, Steven.
Well, that was well said. And I think it is important to stay the course. I mean, obviously I take my responsibilities to my clients very seriously. But I just, you know, they want us to get tired and quit. That's their strategy. And you know what? We've been going 28 years. And when I say we, I mean this big, broad international team led by community leaders in Ecuador. They're not quitting. Their lives are on the line. You know, so, and you know, we pulled it together. We're going to keep going, and we're going to, I'm as energized as ever, by the way. I mean, on my 900th day, the support I'm getting, the love, I'm determined, but more importantly, I'm not alone. You know, you can never do things successfully with one person walking point all the time. You got to have teams of people. They have teams. You got to have your team. And we have a really strong team. We're getting stronger with all the support and love. You know, if you want to help, go to freedonziger.com again. That's so horn outside. I don't know if you can hear that. Freedonziger.com, and join us, and let's keep building this. And you know, ultimately, I think we're going to get justice real soon for the people of Ecuador. They've already won the case. Let me be clear. They've held Chevron accountable in a court of law, affirmed by 6 appellate courts. But Chevron refuses to pay. We have to make them pay. That's the final lap of this journey.
Absolutely. And kudos to your wife, Laura, your son, Matt, who have really demonstrated such powerful support for you on a personal level, have kept all of us going. I know that the support of so many people really around the world has meant a lot to you. It means a lot to all of us as we remember that none of us are taking these stands by ourselves. There are literally millions of people all over the world who on this issue of environmental degradation have had enough and are going to make it clear that on our watch, this shit's going to stop.
Yes.
Much love to all of you. Love you, Steven. To all
Marianne.
of you, thank you for spending this time. Steven, you're the best. You're the leader of the team. And just as you helped so many people in Ecuador, I'm so glad that you feel that enough people are showing up to try to help you. Let's continue it, everybody.
Lots of love to you too, and you're an inspiration. I really love what you do. Thank you so much for the opportunity for me to share my perspective tonight.
Right back at you, and anytime. Okay, everybody. Much love to you. Good night.